You are, if the mood strikes anybody here in this next section, if you want to pour yourself a drink, you're going to get zero judgment from the stage. I can't promise from the crowd. From the stage, it's all good. Okay, so we are moving into our second section. Thank you guys for hanging with us. We have I'm over the moon of who we have joining us on stage today. I'm going to let them introduce themselves here in a second. But just to kind of help ground you on what we're talking about, it is a very challenging time to be an agency, to sell agency work, to I think try to provide this particular type of service. It's a very rewarding time and one that we're obviously still very happy to do, but there are challenges that exist today that did not exist, I think, even a couple of years ago. On that same side, if you are a client or a company who is thinking about hiring an agency, it is just as difficult. It's really challenging to understand what's important, what to ask about, how to vet the right partner. And so today we wanted to bring up two people who I think represent both sides of this coin. So Doug Dugowski is our first panelist. I'm going to let Doug introduce himself, a little bit about background. There's a little bit on the screen for him as well.
Sounds good. Thanks, Kevin. As Kevin said, I'm Doug Dugowski. I spent the last 15 years in brand and performance marketing as a leader of the account management group at Rise Interactive, now Rise a Quad agency. My role was really developing and building client relationships, helping evolve agency operations, and then really driving client media and measurement strategies. So today I'm representing the agency viewpoint.
And then second up we have Julia Fitzgerald.
Thank you. So I'm Julia Fitzgerald, and I'm representing the client viewpoint. I've been a CMO over the last couple of decades in both large companies and mid-sized companies. And as it turns out, mid-sized companies are my jam. That's what I like best. Done a lot of work in retail, retail-related. You guys can hear me? Yeah. So much so that I wrote a book about it. It's all about marketing in mid-sized organizations, because to be successful in a mid-sized company, it's a very different path than what you do in a large organization. So that led to a LinkedIn newsletter, which is called Mid-Size Matchup, where I try to find agencies that are good partners for mid-sized companies and mid-sized CMOs such as myself. So I think a lot about the space that we're about to discuss, and I'm really excited to be here.
And microphones do not like you. Because they should be working for everybody else. All right, no, sorry about that. Yeah, so we have I have read the book. Julia's book is fantastic, and Julia is, I should mention, one of our clients here, so she has the unique perspective on that. So the things we want to talk about today are, these are some kind of bingo-y words, but the quote-unquote changing landscape of agency partnerships, and it is changing dramatically. And I mentioned it at the top, AI is a very small part of that. It's a big component that everybody just wants to know, what are we doing about it? But there's a million other things that are changing. There are technology changes that are more specific to platforms. Google, Meta, these are companies that now operate very differently. LinkedIn than they did a few years ago. Expectations, you guys know this, they're pretty much out of control right now from every perspective. So every sales team is expected to be producing more return on investment, to be driving numbers higher. Typically, in our world at least, budgets are getting cut. Most of our clients have come to us and said, at bare minimum, they need to kind of tighten the belt on what they're able to spend. But you can expect that that has absolutely no impact on the overall return on investment expectations. Relationship design is very differently. So this is an industry, ours, the agency space, that has not innovated or changed all that much in the last 20 years. You kind of have expected and gotten what you've gotten. You have a sales conversation, you get a scope of work, you sign up for it, you have the weekly meetings, so on and so forth. That's now turning into some very different things and different opportunities that we're trying to take to be more architects sort of our own solutions going from there. So that's sort of the foundation of today's conversation. I want to start with Barta Pucci, who I guess did you get a chance to introduce yourself?
Yes.
That's my fault. That's bad MC work right there. I want to ask you first of all to introduce yourself, and then I'm going to come back to you with a question once you're done with that.
Cool.
Hi everyone. Looks like it's working for me, Julia.
I'm
Sorry.
gonna try better next time.
But I'm Marta Bucci. I'm Logical's Director of Product, and what that means in the digital marketing agency space is that I'm in charge of overseeing the evolution of our service offerings. So that's performance, creative, automation, and data and reporting. I'm also in charge of client strategy at the highest level and making sure that our service goes exceptionally, which means I have a lot to say about this. But today I'm representing agency perspective. In my previous roles, I was in charge of selecting and managing agencies for digital and PR when I worked back in DC. So I'm a little bit of both, but I'm over here on this side of the stage with Doug, primarily representing the agency.
Awesome. So Marta, I'm going to kick you first, and this is just simple as the why. Why has it become so challenging? What specifically has become, I think, disruptive in the space as it turns into people looking for not just like a partner, but the right kind of partner?
Yeah, there's a lot of factors impacting this right now, and so I think the thesis statement I would like for everyone to walk away with is old versus new, and the old way really not being applicable anymore when everyone is under such intense uncertainty, not just from like the economy, but frankly from a lot of what we talked about today, the AI hype. There's marketing teams in particular are getting budgets cut. A lot of our clients are going through this. Money is a huge factor, but also just all the noise around what do I need to do next really puts intense pressure on who you partner with to make these kind of decisions. And so the old model of agency relationships, for those of you who have been doing it for a while, was really your agency shows up with a report. How much are they cranking out? How much are they producing for you? And right now, in the new normal, as it were, the questions are a little bit different. It's, are you an extension of my team? What gaps are you filling based on the resources that I have with the budget and the resources that I have? So the new model requires a lot more focus, not just on output. That's still important. It doesn't negate it. But on chemistry, on strategy, on more frankly transparent and flexible and accountable conversations with each other. So the summary statement that I have for this is it's production with purpose. So you're not just producing for production's sake, but you're actually working with a partner to define the relationship, why you're here, what you're trying to get out of it. And I'm excited to talk with Julia and Doug today about how that actually looks in practice.
Yeah, so I think to I don't know if whoever has it, let's go first. Doug, I don't know if since you have a microphone closer to the board.
Is this really flipped on, or are you guys just punking?
I think it's, I don't know.
All right.
I honestly don't know the answer to this, and it threw me off my introduction.
So Doug, why don't you start?
One of the big learnings over the last 5 to 10 years is that as client sophistication goes up, their patience goes down, and the expectation of marketing being a quick fix, and sometimes it's the CFO who thinks that, but the CMO has to ladder up to that, and you add AI technology as another accelerator to that. A lot of business leaders think, can't I just flip a switch, automate this, get instant results? So we'll talk about kind of the courting of finding the right relationship, and part of it is just realistic expectations of what can be done when, and timing and order and prioritization. But marketers are much smarter than they were 10 years ago, but they're way less patient.
I would say on the, all right, we're there. The other side, from the client's point of view, is the dynamic environment right now. So AI is not just a marketing conversation, it's a business conversation, and everybody in the enterprise has an opinion about it. So trying to figure out how do we lean into AI as a marketing tool, and the expectations are kind of all over the board. The other piece with new tools, even outside of AI coming on board, is really making that decision about where's my next best dollar to be spent. And even do I do that through a person on my staff, or do I need somebody in an agency? Because my assumption is, with a new technology, I almost would rather invest my time and trust in an agency because I think they're working it out with multiple parties. Where I would be experimenting with just my own reality. I would rather have somebody who is testing and learning, as we were talking about in the last session, on multiple fronts, and then I get to benefit from that knowledge. Right now, I'm the CMO at an art auction house. They don't all know a lot about AI and marketing. They know a lot about a lot, but how do I bring that help to them in this environment is one of the new challenges.
How, like, what questions do you ask? Like, how do you go about finding the right fit for your team? Maybe just like for folks in the room.
So it's not through an RFP. I've done those in the past, and in certain circumstances that works. But I do it through networking. I have my old girls network, so to speak. I used to be at Sears and Kmart. A lot of great clients. There were a lot of great networking through there. And then other people who I've met along the way. And I look at what my current situation is. I describe it. I'm like, what do you got? Who do you know? Have you been? And that's generally where I start. And for the other agencies out there, I kind of want to remind them, like, that's how a lot of this happens. So whenever you're talking to anyone from like your neighbors or at an AMA meeting or whatever, that's really where a lot of these conversations happen, and that's who I remember to like reach out and call. I think that's how I found you.
That is specifically how you found us, and thank you for doing so. But yeah, I think this segues nicely into, Doug, you used a word that I love, which is courtship, because that is, if you were at our partner event last year, you probably heard me rant against RFPs. Yeah, put it on my tombstone. But courtship's a great word, and you've been on a couple sides of this that I think bring interesting perspective today. Number one, you've been agency side. You've worked on much larger like pitch teams than we have here. Number two, just big companies, larger brands. You represent, I think, the large agency side. So I'm curious how does that change when you kind of move up a level into that perspective, and like what might be more relevant at the mid-size from those learnings.
Yeah. I think when you think about courtship, it's kind of like a first date, right? You're putting your best foot forward. You're really trying to be the most innovative, most interesting. But like a first date, you kind of need your first date questions. Where'd you grow up? How many siblings do you have? But from an agency and client standpoint, it's really understanding who are the stakeholders, what are their goals, what are their individual motivations, and asking those questions throughout the org, whether it's through a formal RFP or just through a networking, and hearing consistency, the narrative of what is important and how do we measure success. You can't have any fit, let alone the right fit, if you can't define success and it isn't mutually shared. So it is really about asking those questions and understanding how do we win. And that's what, Kevin, I loved what you and Chris were talking about, is you guys have this playbook of how do I ask these questions, and then you've even automated, based on the answers, what is the scope and how do we go about this. But it's really about asking questions like you're sitting having drinks for the first date, and really understanding motivations, and a year from now, how do we know we've won, and are we saying the same thing in the same language?
And that is a good segue to Marta. I think Marta is responsible. I have a lot of kind of initial conversations with prospects at Logical. Marta's responsible, along with our product leadership team, our product directors, in engineering a long-term, scalable, and successful solution. So I think that is built on things like discovery and asking hard questions, because to no fault of your own, and I'm saying your generally, prospects come to agencies very often the same way they might to a car dealership, and that I don't want you to sell me the things that you want to sell me. What can happen is that can lead to a failure to align on the reality of what problems actually bring you to our doorstep. They say, I need paid ads. Paid ads can mean a million different things, and more often than not, it does, and it extrapolates into other services. So Marta, I would kind of ask you, because you have championed this effort on our side, how you sort of begin this sort of kind of co-engineered relationship, how does that translate to a scope of work, and then into like the actual day-to-day?
Yeah, I mean, to Doug's point, some things haven't changed. Folks ask us what industries you work in. We look for demographic, like baseline fit and proof of capacity. That hasn't changed. But I think the real fun starts when I say ask nosier questions, and that I honestly has been received pretty well in the current climate because people are kind of dying to talk about it. Two departments that emerged recently for us are our creative department, which has become more fleshed out, and automation. And those are connected to very sensitive, very intimate things, your brand and your business operations and your data. But asking about that in early conversations, do you have someone managing it? If the answer is no, that's information. That means we can, help to the degree that folks are comfortable. If you have one or two folks managing it, or it seems a little unclear, you get the sense that there's inconsistency, that's also information. And that informs, okay, what level of support are we looking for here? What is needed to build trust in this situation, which I think we'll talk about a little later. But understanding in-house resources, how the company is structured, how decisions were made, Doug's great point about is the narrative consistent about what success looks like. Those are the types of things we ask about now because it's really relevant to everything else we do, and we can support all aspects of it in a more connected way.
Yeah, and I guess, Julia, on the client side, that courtship idea requires a vulnerability that can be challenging, especially again when you feel like you're being sold to. I guess any thoughts, suggestions on how to come to that conversation with, let me be transparent about what I know, what I don't know, what I don't know that I don't know, and how to kind of pry the best answer out of an agency without signing yourself up for the whole kit and caboodle in terms of monthly management.
Sure, so I think for a first date question for me, it would be awful. I would just say, how much money you got? I think that CMOs and clients need to, first of all, be really upfront about what their budgets are, to know if you're in the right conversation. You don't waste anybody's time. And I used to have a boss who would say, never give them a price range. If you tell them that's how much they're going to spend. And I'm like, right. Isn't that the point?
Yeah.
But you're going to get the return on that. But I think what's hard is, the basis of the relationship is resources. It is money. So if you play these cat and mouse games, you're kind of wasting time.
Yes.
What is your budget? What is the uncertainty? I know I have this amount of budget, but if I don't make this, by mid-year, it could get cut. Share that.
Yeah.
Because when you ask for either a creative plan, a campaign, a media plan, most agencies can give it to you in small, medium, and large. The other thing, just knowing that you're in the right conversation, though, is this is a lot about being in mid-sized companies. If you know you have a pretty small budget, and that's your starting point, and that might have been my first question to you. I'm like, hi, I'm Julia. I got your name from Maureen. This is my budget. Do you even want to talk to me? Because there are some agencies, I used to work with Rise. Rise would not want to talk to me. I mean, not because I don't love all those people. I don't make sense in this current role for their business model.
Right.
So sorting that out up front, do you as a client make sense for an agency? We all have our different business models.
Yeah.
Figuring that out with really candid talk about money up front opens the door to all of those other conversations. But it's all about the money, isn't that the song? But if you're honest there, then the rest of the conversation can flow much more naturally.
That's so true.
That is a great reminder that it's like if you want to buy a Ferrari, the cost of the Ferrari is not the cost of the Ferrari. You have to think about the upkeep, the maintenance, insurance, and all that. A lot of this applies very similarly to how you approach this type of work. If you come to us and you say, I need to increase this KPI year over year, how much does this service cost? We might give you a quote. We might say, okay, we can run paid ads. Earlier in the reporting, I mentioned that a lot of times what comes down to successful paid campaigns or SEO is landing page and creative. Those are two things that CRO component, like running good creative, those are, not hidden costs, but a lot of times they're costs that our buyers don't want to hear about. Up front, we will say, are you interested in talking to us about letting our creative team wrap their hands around your strategy, your positioning in the market, things like that? No, I don't need that. Well, those are hidden costs. Those are things that are important to cover because just because we say we can do this campaign for you for X price doesn't mean that it is in any way guaranteeing the result that you come to us with. So I think that is that kind of back and forth vulnerability and conversation on architecting that. And then Marta, I may pass back to you because I think that shifts into that first kind of dreaded 30, 60, 90. Like how do we get this thing off the ground when tension is high, trust is being built, things like that. That's something that's changed a lot for us. Logical has had to start moving much faster, I think, early on. And I would ask how you kind of reacted to that, what prompted it, and how you work with it.
Yeah, actually, that is a beautiful segue. So I do want to speak on one thing, which is exactly what Kevin said. Someone will come to us with a specific problem. I'll use I need more qualified pipeline. I need my marketing efforts to be driving qualified conversations for my sales leads. And we'll say, okay, can you track that?
Mm-hmm.
And it's kinda. Then, so when I say we're asking about these really intimate things in the relationship, it's because the answer isn't pretty, and it's really hard to go through that iteration and have almost feel not perfectly, but I'm this lone marketing person who has to do so much digging to actually figure out what the ROI is, and that's really hard. That's information for me. So I say, okay, here's what I would prescribe then. You let me, in the first 30 days, do it data cleanup. Let me get in there, do the audit, figure out if this is a quick fix or if it's gonna take longer. I'll tell you if it takes longer. The radical transparency element of partnership that we're talking about here means we're direct in those conversations. Because to your point, Julia, nobody has time to waste there. So the challenge with that though is sometimes people just aren't ready. I was just talking with someone out in the crowd about this, that if you're not ready from a budget perspective or a resource allocation perspective, I'll tell you if that's inhibiting to the project, but more often than not, there are ways around it. So it's about working together to say, okay, we know what long-term success looks like and what we're marching toward, and so when we do find money under the couch cushions, maybe we'll invest in this data cleanup you're talking about and more automation and reporting. But until then, if you can just show me that you can get leads in for $50, don't write that down for B2B, but then we'll consider that a win and we'll keep it moving. So that's the type of co-creation conversation that not just me, but my product leadership team are having right now in very early stages of partnership. Because I think people really expect agencies to be a part of that expectation setting right now, and it's added pressure, but I think we prefer to be in the driver's seat and do it and set ambitious but realistic goals together.
Yeah, no, well put. And Doug, again, I think you've been on the sort of former iteration of agency side, which I think was, I dare say, simpler. I don't know if it was easier, but at some points it felt sure fewer channels. So I would be curious, what have you seen, I guess, just trajectory-wise from where you started in terms of how that setup works, trying to kind of find that unique alignment and uncover those kind of reals about what we have to accomplish together.
Yeah, I think it's this catch-22 of the agency. If you have this radical transparency and you know the budget, and it sounds like Marta, what you're talking about is being a strategic advisor. But sometimes when you come in and you've got this budget, you become this menu, you become this kind of this activator who's just an order taker, and it's very transactional. So especially nowadays with the expectations of automation and AI, the agencies are adding the most value when they have strategic framing and really thinking about the why we're doing something, not just how. So I think that's a really big evolution, is that you can't have a scope of work that's, we're going to give 10 creatives and 15 reports and all these very transactional things, but you also can't have a scope of work that's we're going to optimize everything and bring insight to everything. So finding that balance is really important. What I have had success with in my career is you kind of need both aspects. the way you make it kind of aspirational or a little bit open-ended is you create like a learning agenda, right? It's more about what are the things we're going to do to evolve and try new things. Every quarter we want to have 3, learnings or tests that are going to work on these things. So it's more about how you're going to approach evolving and getting better, because you can't possibly look into the future with a crystal ball and know exactly how your scope needs to be written. But you also need these guardrails, or else you have a blank check and the client says, well, you said you're going to run my marketing, I don't care about the hours or scope or budget. So it's just this balance. And I think the learning agenda is a trick, I would say, to really make sure that you're focused on evolving, but also creating guardrails.
I love that too, because it helps you show up to calls with intention, and the intention should not just be to react to the report. I think the client all too often kind of comes and says, well, I'm looking, I want more, I just don't know what it, I have a hard time articulating what more is. That's a really great framework for, like, I've given you guys specific, I think, guidance on what I expect from you. Doug, I'll ask you this, and then we can push the same question over to Julia, but I mean, just from all of your years handing off clients to agency teams with your account management, what are some of the, I think, common factors of clients who you handed off to teams and the team was like, I'm excited to work, we're going to go above and beyond? What were the characteristics of clients that got the best work, the most energy, the most effort, just in terms of like what they brought to the table?
Yeah, I think it's a partnership, right? We keep talking about that. Being collaborative, using objective data to use to make decisions. I think another big part of it is celebrating wins, even if they're very small, kind of showing progress. To flip it the other way, the worst client relationships are the, praised privately, criticized publicly. You kind of need the, we're all in it together. And then culturally, as an agency, you've got to really instill that accountability, hiring people that are naturally curious, that like to explore, ask questions, learn about the business, to avoid being so transactional and avoid just telling the weather. If you spent X and you got 1,000 impressions, it's really understanding the what drove that and what's next. And having someone who's naturally curious about that is cultural and operational at an agency.
Yeah. You notice how I asked up that, because we love all of our clients exactly equally.
Never again.
I'd like to build on the learning aspect that you were talking about. You don't always know what you need at the beginning of the year or the beginning of a relationship. And I would say in this organization that I just started with in January, they hadn't done certain marketing activations in digital marketing. And I'm not doing this just to be nice to you, Kevin, but one of the things we had to do is, they were asking me these good, hard questions. What are your goals? What are the baselines? And you have to just be open and say, well, I don't really know. So let's make some educated guesses. And we'll put them out there, and then every month we go back and say, all right, how are we doing against these educated guesses? So what we'll have in year 2 is a baseline. And sometimes just saying, like, I don't know, this is a best guess. Let's fund and march towards this goal. And I think what it does is it puts everybody, the marketing team and the agency in it together. And it's kind of like, all right, this is a shared venture. We might be right on the nose. We might be wildly off. But I think that helps with the learning.
You said just my favorite 2 words, which is year 2. Which is we're always yeah. So I think that just kind of segues nicely. And Marta, I'll go back to you. So we talk at Logical about we want to bake innovation into every scope where we think our clients expect that. That is so much harder. Since we've kind of made that proclamation, we've realized that's harder to execute than it is to say. But everything we're talking about right here, there's this degree of uncertainty that exists in the selection and the evolution process. How do you, as the director of products, how are you like coaching your directors? How are you coaching our team to find ways to test, to innovate, and then communicate that value back to our clients? And I guess if you have like, this worked and this was spectacular failure, that's a very good
Yeah, I, first of all, think our clients are absolutely correct to push us on this. In times like this, I'm frequently having conversations with our clients that are like, I know that you haven't done this before, but if I pay you enough, will you just figure this out? So the answer is yes. Like, I'll do my darndest, certainly. But when it comes to like how we bake that into the company and the scope, I think Doug made a point earlier, we can't make the scopes all loosey-goosey, and we also can't be like, we will do X hours of innovation every month. That's just not how it works. But it's kind of the cost of doing business for us. So what we do, I have heads of our product departments, and they have intentional meetings for like what I would call just like account and bandwidth work and keeping track of the table stakes, the stuff that needs to get done, but trying to bake in more time for reflection, for I found this really cool thing, let's talk about it. And that communication flow coming up to me, we're testing this on this account. I tried this thing, making sure that that is structured in the company. And I'll be honest, that's imperfect right now. It's pretty hard to do when there's just client demands left and right. Requests, not demands.
Yeah.
Gently. But that's the reality of what it is right now. And I think it's correct to push us, but I also think it's pretty exciting because I think I said this when we were riffing on this panel earlier, but it's kind of fun. Like marketing is actually like fun again, which is good because I was getting kind of bored. So it's making that space for fun and joy and finding things is actually what keeps it all alive and breeds that type of energy and chemistry in accounts.
And on that note, Julia brought this up in our panel prep, which is you mentioned you really want an agency to serve a mentor capacity to you, which is such a breath of fresh air for us to be asked that, because I think there is a guardedness. I understand why, but there's a guardedness between sort of intellectual property on both sides. We're not always thrilled to give away, the secrets that could allow you to take something in-house. So I'm curious, like, what you meant by that, and sort of what success stories you've had with us or whoever.
Sure. So again, from more of a mid-sized firm, I have a smaller staff, and how do your staff members, how do you develop them? So the way I look at it is by bringing in agencies that have certain skills. This is how my team learns how it's done. And I was telling Tessa, who is just my favorite, she's my digital marketing manager. When I was new there, I was asking her about how we get things done. How do you do this? And then where does that go? And then where does that go? And she answered me like 3 clicks down, and then finally she just looked at me, and we're doing this through Zoom, of course, and she's like, Julia, cut me a break. I'm an art history major. And I loved her even more. But how do I give Tessa a great example of what a digital dashboard should look like? Because the first one she gave me was written out in Word. I'm like, oh, girl. But I don't have the time with just my allotment to do that kind of mentoring. So some of the things that agencies think of as just commonplace is truly mentoring for a younger staff member who hasn't seen this before, who doesn't really understand how to evolve an idea or a campaign from month to month. So when I'm making my decisions about do we do something in-house or do I hire an agency, part of what I'm looking at is how would an agency benefit the people I have on staff? Because as managers, really our biggest job is to help enrich the people's careers who are under us. So I like to look at it that way, and what can my team learn from your team?
Yeah, that's so good. And Doug, I'll take this back over to you from the agency side, because one thing that I wish our clients knew more about me, about Marta, about our product leadership team, is that we love talking shop. We spend a lot of time around here talking about things that you guys are probably worried about, that you're curious about. We talk. One of our principles here is we want to hire people who like marketing. We really try to avoid hiring people who don't really have a passion for this. That breeds a lot of good conversation. I wish people talked to us more and just came to not ask questions about their account, but just like what's going on, in the world. Is there an equivalent to you in your experience, Doug, about clients who like kind of figured out like a secret recipe to like, I just want to get the best information possible out of this group. That might be skipping, to different departments, might be asking for separate meetings. Just like who have we ever seen anecdotally or just make this person up, who's like really leveraged the agency system in terms of like, I hired this group for their breadth of expertise. I'm actually going to take advantage of that now that I'm a part.
Yeah. No, I think examples of that I've lived is this idea of a media client who has a lot of questions about creative, or vice versa, a creative client who says, well, now that I have these beautiful things, how do I get them out there? And it really just starts with, I think first, empathy, right? It's like, it's asking before you explain, and really just trying to understand what's out there, what's working, what's not. Because that is a really big benefit of working with an agency, is we are working with many similar clients, similar audiences, business models. They say two similar clients is a conflict, 3 is a specialization. So hopefully you've got a playbook that you've seen work. And maybe it won't work for a specific campaign or audience, but it's really about designing a test to learn. So it's starting with empathy. It's coming at it collaboratively, and I think it's also about storytelling, right? So a lot of what makes an agency strong is when we can digest findings and insights into a visualization or a graph, or just something that's digestible that not only our direct contact can understand, but they can take that to their leadership or their peers or their CFO and say, here's what we're actually talking about doing. So, I think just talking about what else is working, what else have you tried, and then dedicating some budget to it as well. I think that's if you've got 5, 10, 15% of your budget is innovation budget for testing and learning, and as I mentioned, putting it in the scope of work, having a learning agenda holds you accountable to actually doing something that's going to potentially stair-step your performance.
I think an easy one to start with is because in the mid-sized market, a lot of our clients are forced to, not required to, but forced to focus a lot of their time at the bottom of the funnel. They have such rigid conversion and revenue goals that it's hard for us to move up the funnel. It is entirely acceptable for you to go to your agency partner and say, I don't even know what my budget is or if I have it, but can you explain to me what you would do if I had it so I could help tell that story on top? That's the kind of question that we don't get a lot of. Now, I understand why. The concern is if I even bring this up, they're going to try to sell me some service. The answer is yes, I absolutely am. But don't even avoid me and go to somebody else, or truly just come ask. We do a lot of spec work. At agencies, I think more now than ever, one of our challenges, we do a ton of free work. A part of our sales process is more unpaid labor than it ever has been because we want to find the right partner. We want to spend the time up front identifying the right people, but just having conversations with things that are gaps in your area is simply something that doesn't happen to me very often, and I would say to you probably as much. Mark, I'll kick back over to you. And Chris, how am I doing on time, by the way?
You're doing great.
Sometimes I talk for like 80 straight minutes.
No, you're doing great.
Okay, all right. So I think we move into this idea. One of the things that behind you here is our 5 pillars, our 5 principles of relationship design. I want to move into this idea, on these ideas on the far right, of flexibility and like radical transparency. Both, I think, big principles of yours, but also things that you kind of try to work into your product. You talked about the scopes can't be loosey-goosey. They also can't be too firm. How do they adjust right in terms of the ability for a client to pivot, their needs to change, things like that? How do we accommodate that as an agency?
By cutting through the noise and getting to what we're actually trying to accomplish. Julia made a great point about that at the start of this, where it's, yes, budget, but also what are we actually trying to get out of this? And that's hard when you don't know a person, but I think it builds mutual trust by going through multiple rounds of conversations. I know that transactionally it's probably easier to just be like, yeah, I like this agency and keep it moving, but I'll share a story where I'm in the middle of conversations with a prospect right now, and we've been through 3 rounds. We've met members from every side of the marketing team, and it's been great because we've had my team and the primary points of contact we'll be working with on the account have kind of stayed on after their leadership team has jumped off, and we've kind of just already got a little like sidebar and a huddle going, and they were very intentional about asking us, it's important to us that our agency is willing to not do cookie cutter and push the envelope, and is really ambitious in terms of what we want to try and test, and that really jives with us. So like having those little, additional meetings, I'm a big proponent of if it gets the job done. Like not meetings for meeting's sake, but that type of sidebarring, that type of questioning that of each other. Like I was thrilled they asked that about like our values and our philosophy, because yeah, we want that. We want to like test and learn together, and figuring that out and getting to the heart of like what we're trying to accomplish makes the scope a lot easier. Yeah.
And Julia, so you have this like specific expertise on mid-market. In your experience, do flexibility and radical transparency exist in a different way in mid-market than they might get up into as like big agency, big clients? Is there a tendency to maybe be too flexible, or I guess what have you found pattern-wise in terms of how those two things play out?
Well, you don't have as much budget generally in a smaller company, so you just have to be smarter about, you can be more nimble, but you have to be really smart because you don't have as much margin for error. But you also don't have to have a big RFP where the room is filled with like so many people. In those situations, I feel for the agencies. I mean, how does the agency know who's really the decision maker? And that's a really tricky thing for an agency. Like, who do you look at? I've been in some where I was actually the decision maker and they were only talking to the CEO. They didn't get it. But that's hard. So with really large organizations, I think there's less flexibility. And you don't know if you can really just be that transparent. There's generally more rules, safeguards. That's part of the reason I don't like those big companies. You have to spend so much time being a responsible cog in a well-oiled machine that you don't get to do as much direct marketing, working with partners to connect your product with the customer. So that's the stuff I kind of like.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's a small company.
And then, Doug, I guess back to you. You were on the other side of that. You were a big agency, big company. You can frame your answer however you want. Are there things that you wish you could have been more flexible on, and you're like, I wish I could have the freedom to do that. And then there's stuff that you're like, these mid-sized agencies are idiots. They shouldn't be. They shouldn't be bending over backwards for X, Y, or Z.
No, I mean, part of, like, reacting, Julie, what you were saying, it's about understanding not just title, but influence, and understanding, who in the room is a champion, who's a gatekeeper, who's a decision maker, because they all kind of have their own agenda and needs, and Julie, as you're talking about, you need to speak to each person differently. I don't think it's different at the enterprise level or the mid-size or the boutique startup agency in terms of we're all people. Selling and relationships is a people process. So I think really just getting the heart of goals and the motivations is how you're going to find a business solution. So at the heart of it, the process is the same no matter if you're selling a $100 million contract or a $2,000 a month retainer. But I think it's really about listening and figuring out how you can solve business problems together.
Excellent. So I think to understand your Martin, I'd love for you to just change slides behind you just so you can see. This I think speaks to you guys on the backside of your AI flyer that you have some notes on partnership things. But I would love for you to talk about a little bit about what we are sort of trying to design here in terms of this kind of co-creative model of a successful experience. And then I'd love to open it up to the crowd if anybody has questions for Doug, Julia, Marta. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I'll round it out. The summary is, the end point is, partnership with purpose. Like that's really it. Every scope that goes out the door, every new client, even refreshing our existing partnerships is making sure everybody knows why they're here. Not just our clients, but like our team knows, why are you even in a partnership with Logical? And this shows up in a lot of different ways throughout the partnership. We were talking about reporting earlier. We want that experience, like the best feedback I get is people leave our calls and are like, I feel like I learned something from your team every single time I get off with them, and that's success to me. That's what we're striving for. You know, I get feedback about, you know, my account manager is proactively, there's that P word, giving me things for the board meeting. You know, the scorecards that you guys have made my life so easy and make it easy for me to advocate for you. And I love that people feel that they can come to me about that, but also that, you know, they're going directly to their team about it. So in terms of what we're trying to build here, it shows up in a lot of different ways, but at the heart of it is really working together to establish that mutual trust, to be flexible in terms of what we're doing. Not like free for all, but you know, with purpose, with intent, with understanding of the primary objective we're trying to accomplish here. And how that gets done is probably going to change. There's a part of bingo card somewhere at the agency, and on it is I reserve the right to change my mind at any time when things change. So that's.
She does.
And I do.
Yeah. Cool. I want to open it up quickly. Does anybody in the crowd have thoughts, questions? Want to yell at anybody? Or either panelists or myself? Yes, go ahead.
How much do you enjoy working with bootstrap companies out there, in angel investment days, where they really, the brand is probably closer, the brand value is closer to zero, and that needs to be boosted, but there's not a lot of cash to do it.
Yeah.
But, you know, obviously the goal is to get that Series A, where things free up.
It's such a good question, and just in case somebody didn't hear. So the question was how much do we enjoy working with startup, angel invested types of companies whose value is closer to zero than it is anything else? And the answer to that is that Logical does not exist without those clients. We're 19 years old. There was a big chunk of our early years that were dedicated to that type of work. If you hire curious people, which we do, if you hire, thinking ambitious people, which we try to, that's a challenge that can be very fun. The problem becomes, when it's not fun, is a lot of those trust and vulnerability issues that don't come up, which is, if you're gonna hire us, you gotta kind of let us run. You know what I mean? And that means we need to have access to stuff that sometimes people don't want to give us in terms of creative or the budget that exists and things like that. So I would say that designed experience together, the de-risking factor and like that kind of idea of an extended partnership is critical. And we've certainly had as much fun and as much enjoyment on tiny clients as we had on some, and we've also had a couple that have been really blown up. Some of our best success stories came to us when they were very small, and I'm proud to say they graduated past us. They now work with larger agencies.
Right.
I'm very happy to say that. So that's my own and Martha or Doug or Joey.
To me, no brand awareness, no sales, no budget is not a problem unless you have no data, right? I think the data is what's exciting, and you can do so much with so little if you either already have data or you have a way to systemically collect, information about, the buyer journey or anything of that sort. So that's what's exciting, is figuring out ways to solve those problems using data. And starting from zero and going to something is actually more exciting, I think, than the 1 million to 1 million and one doesn't excite you too much.
And you get way less thanks for it.
Yeah.
I can tell you that. Julie, your thoughts on that? Yeah.
Not as much. Generally, I haven't had the opportunity to do that, and it seems like a lot of fun, though. I mean, isn't building always more fun than maintaining? So it seems really exciting.
Yeah.
Editorial observation.
Yeah.
Cool. Anybody else? Thank you for your question, by the way. Cool. All right. Why don't we do closing statements? I know you guys. You can frame it as advice. You can frame it as sort of like what would you recommend. Culminating, I think, big picture into all of us are trying to sort of understand what comes next, whether we are agency or client. You guys can give your perspective. Whatever kind of your thesis or your going away statement is, it's great. I'll start.
So in my newsletter, the mid-size matchup, it really looks at finding the right size partner. And when I say that, I mean somebody who's going to be excited to have you as a client and someone whose budgets and talents meet yours. And I really do think that that has so much to do with like past successes that I've had. Is I look at what our marketing team can do and how much better it's been made by an agency that is the right fit. So finding that right fit is, it's a little bit of that kismet. So I'll leave you with that.
To me, most client agency relationships don't fail due to performance. It's oftentimes something that occurred or didn't occur before a campaign even went live or a creative was developed or money was spent. So my kind of advice is slow down in the beginning. You know, we talked a lot about asking the right questions. You've got this courtship. You're trying to build something long-term, something mutually exciting, beneficial. You know, it's very easy to make assumptions. It's very easy for an agency to sell you, you know, the shiniest object when really what you need in year one, day one is something more basic that builds to something more evolved. But really taking the time to make sure you are defining success, you do have a clear measurement plan, you speak the same language. I mean, one of my favorite stories was many, many years ago. We had a brand new client. It was very big for the agency at the time. Day one, we were getting panicky calls from their VP because performance had dropped. What we realized is that they were defining, you know, success based on a propensity for these leads to actually convert to applications and enrollments. And we didn't have that data. We just saw cost per lead in the engines, right? And just that simple question of what are you looking at when you measure success? We ended up having a 3-day on-site meeting where we flew about 15 marketers to Chicago for 3 full days, and we went through everything, defining account structure and just verbiage. You know, when we say tier 1, what does tier 1 mean to you? Taking the time to get that right at the beginning caused, you know, it led from this panic and meltdown to a 9-year huge relationship that really helped the agency. So really just slow down, get it right, ask a lot of questions. I think those are the things, but you got to balance that with the CFO who wants results today, tomorrow, yesterday.
So your lips to God's ears.
Yeah.
Somebody comes charged in there, you
Yeah.
got to speed that.
But you know, just as you wouldn't want to make a rash decision with any other relationship in your life, you know, take the time to get it right.
I'll close with a story, or I guess anecdote. So this year, probably more than every other year, we've lost RFPs, but gotten a call 3 months later from the person who issued that RFP, and they've said, we can't stop thinking about you. Only one person said that, but it went right to my head. The idea was the same, but because they said, we really felt the chemistry and the vibes throughout your process. You were second place, which I hate to hear, but you know, they came back 3 months later and, you know, acknowledged we went with the safe option, and actually what it looked like on paper wasn't reality. It did not work out. You know, the promises were made, the pitch team was bigger, they said they would do X, Y, or Z, and it just hasn't happened. And what would it look like if we were to work with you guys? And I say that as a humble brag, but also honestly as a depiction of everything we talked about up here today, which is that selection process is not as clean or neat as we think it is. Elements of it are, like, the, you know, budget and like table stakes, as it were, but the chemistry and the vibe of it all is actually more important now than ever. And I'm proud to say a lot of those folks have moved into relationships with us now, and you know, we're talking about year 2. So
Year 2. The theme of today is
year 2.
Yeah, guys. So I will close. Number one, thank you so much to Julia and Doug. It's such a huge benefit to us and to the audience to have people up here down and things and part of it. I will close this down for the day just by saying thank you to you guys for showing up. Law School is locally owned. If you don't know us, Chris and Lauren live in town. We try to employ people in town. This is our space. Chicago and community is very important to us, so we want to provide authentic events where you can come and have, you know, I think dialogue or hear presentations that we feel like actually add value to you and your business. But you know, in a place where most people are kind of working from home and you don't always get out, I know it's a huge lift sometimes to get yourself out of your sweatpants and into a place like this. Truly, from the bottom of our heart, we're so grateful. There is, again, alcohol, water, cheese for the 4 food groups. Yeah, all those things are over there. But thank you guys for showing up today. Hope you can hang out and talk to us. But we very much appreciate you being a part of this experience.